Welcome to Victor or Death, the podcast for content creators. My name's Elijah, and these are my co-hosts.
Hey, it's me, Cameron, host of Wildcard Cameron, and also Sweating the Small Stuff.
Hello, it is I, fellow content creator, Keon Buzar, and I help run the Frameforge YouTube channel and the podcast Life Advice with Keon.
Hey, my name is Josh. You can find me on Twitter at Joshua M. Simons. I am a freelance writer and developer for tabletop gaming, and just generally all around a creator.
Thank you so much for joining me. We just finished our two-part discussion about networking over the past 2 weeks, and now we want to move into talking about how we can recontextualize our lives around recognizing that we all make content. It might not be content for entertaining, but we all create something. And so I want to set up Cameron to go ahead and run with it.
Yeah, this is something that, well, it actually goes back to a discussion I think we're going to have a little later on about my interview with Jessica Abel and her stuff with sustainable creativity. But something we kept talking about, and something the more I thought about, realized was perfect for everything you do on the show, Elijah, is that like Victory or Death is a podcast, it's a show for content creators. But it's easy for a lot of us to think content creation is just this thing that like YouTubers and Instagram celebrities and all these people with huge followings do. But almost everything that every person who interacts with this show or podcasts or almost anything will know is that like your job, the thing you usually are paid to do, the thing you usually have fun doing, the things that you do in your free time, all of them are in their own way content creation. The entire world we exist in is we have ideas, we share them, we try to learn, we try to collaborate, but everything that we're creating is some sort of content. It might be a physical thing, it might be a virtual thing, it might be just communicating ideas, it might be turning those ideas into shows and books and new devices that make the world better, but it's all creation. And what I loved was the more I thought about it, the more I realized how many of the conversations that we have on the show seem to keep getting applied to my own work and my own real life beyond just creating podcasts and all the other cool, fun projects I get to participate in. So I really wanted to talk about today was what are some of the ways that you guys bring your own work as a content creator to your lives outside like YouTube and writing and other things, or how do they become part of how you work those two together?
That's a really good question. I think for me, my day job, I work in healthcare, doing billing and reimbursement, and so the contrast between that and then writing stuff for people to play tabletop games is it's a pretty wide difference. There's not a whole lot that you would look at first in common and say, oh yeah, those are totally similar. But I think there are a couple of ways that relationship actually makes a lot of sense. I think the first really boils down to how you approach getting things done and how you approach people. So one of the great things about tabletop gaming is it is very much a collaborative experience. You are cooperating with other people. You are bouncing ideas back and forth off of the people that you're playing games with. And getting into that mindset of, hey, it's not all about me and just what I can do. It's about what we can do together. And sometimes, like I might not be perfectly equipped to handle a situation. If I'm playing for instance, a spellcaster who has no physical strength or ability whatsoever, I can't take on something that's going to require getting down and dirty in a physical sense, because that's not how I'm built as a character. Taking that kind of mentality of, hey, we all have our different strengths, and we can apply that to real life, so to speak. One of the things that I've been kind of taking from my time in the tabletop gaming world and applying to my time in the healthcare world is I don't need to do everything. If I can specialize in this area, be really good at just keeping my own things organized, I can have someone else on my team do this thing and this thing, because that's where they are most skilled. I am a team lead in my department at work, and so I do have the ability to say, "Hey, I'm really good at this. Let me own this." But I've got someone on my team who is super organized and phenomenal at all this detail work. Let me have them do this reporting for us because they're going to do a good job. And I've got someone else who is phenomenal at getting into more of the interpersonal stuff. They're good at relating with others. They have a lot of drive to go and um, start new things, take on new projects. So if I've got something that kind of needs to be piloted, I'll hand that off to them. And there's also things that I can take from the healthcare world to bring into tabletop gaming. And so I think finding ways where um, there are similarities between content creation and a corporate job is actually really not that hard, even though they might seem so separate. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to do our best to make something worthwhile. And if you go into it with the mindset that, hey, we're all kind of in this together, we're all working towards a common goal, we're going to go really far.
Yeah, I like how that actually fits really well into the relationship conversations we're having before, where we're not just trying to create transactional interactions with other people. We're trying to actually build friendships and show that you're not just looking at people and saying, all right, can this person do something for me or not? You're taking the time to get to know people around you so you can understand how your strengths and their strengths overlap, or where their strengths compensate for your weaknesses. And that's not something that you just get to do. That's something that can take time. And building those relationships is equally as important at work, where those relationships can really impact the bottom line, to use some corporate terms.
And just like you were saying with working with other people, no man is an island, as the quote says. And it's whenever I hear, and the biggest advice I ever hear from any artist is go live your life, and the art will fall from that. Like art mimics life, and life mimics art, and all that stuff, because we're all in this ecosystem. So by going out and doing things, by being part of a team, by being in a corporate environment, or by being however you live your life, like if you're a freelancer and you're interacting with clients, well, you meet a bunch of different people. And let's say you're a writer, that can inform your writing. There's a problem that a lot of writers run into, like Dan Harmon and Aaron Sorkin, where you'll find a character that is them. Like it turns in, it goes from having, oh cool, this character is embodying like this archetype, or this character is embodying a different archetype. For some of the things that they write, it's just basically like a talking, like they're speaking exactly like the writer writes. And you can fall into that trap if you don't go out and speak with other people or find other different ideas. And that comes from living your day-to-day life. Like if you have a bunch of errands you need to run, then that can become something that you end up writing about, or you end up making some art piece about. Creating that content can be influenced by your daily life, and that's something that I really enjoy about the art then becomes an escape. And something I really, really wish I did, and if anybody's in school, I really advise that you do this, is take a lesson that you're doing, take something that is kind of hard or interesting, or that is right happening right now. I mean, like right now that you're learning, and create something based on that. For me, when thinking back on it, would be I love making videos now explaining things. If I had made a video about a topic at school, or a topic that we were covering, or made some sort of 3D animation, or the stuff that I like to make now based on that stuff that was happening in my life back then, not only is that educational because other people can learn from it from an educational sense, because it's school, you're learning something, but also you can look back on it and relearn the things that you lost. And you'll be able to remember things more easily, because by teaching, you really need to have a firm grasp on what you're learning before you can teach to somebody else. So by doing all of those things, you're then not only creating something interesting, but you're reinforcing things that you know.
There's kind of 2 points that I think we're kind of talking around and I think are really important. I think the first one is part of the reason that I got into making this podcast was because I had essentially made myself a student of a designer named Chris Do last year and started consuming like all of his content, all of it, like his entire YouTube channel, hundreds of hours of content. It's called The Future. I've talked about it before.
Oh yeah.
But phenomenal content. First of all, go check him out if you just want to learn good stuff and learn how to think and learn how to learn. All of that, awesome. But I think the big thing to take away from the first part of this conversation is that you're going to learn best by teaching someone what you just learned. Not only does it help you wrap your mind around how to talk about the thing you just learned, it helps you synthesize more information out of it, right? So like I started this podcast as a like I'm going to make content and then I'm going to teach you what I've been learning about content. It didn't totally work because it just turned into like more of a documenting process, and I think myself and Dan really kept hitting the same roadblocks every time. You know, we'd record, it'd be like, oh well, you know, we're still at the same spot as last week. And so there was kind of this peter out. But as I began to lean more into the future and, you know, started working as a temp copywriter again, and now as a full-time copywriter, I began to learn a lot. And then I started teaching the lessons to, you know, the people around me. And that's how we got into the season 2, where I wanted it to be shorter, more concise, and teach people what, you know, I've been learning. I brought in other people to help me do that. And all of that is just synthesizing information for what we've learned and then learning how to recontextualize what we think we know for other people, which helps you really find out what you actually know. It's this weird cyclical process, but everyone thinks that, oh, well, I need to be an expert to teach something. Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think we all have working definitions of different things, and, you know, you can teach something even if you're not an expert, because you can help set someone up for to start learning what you know, and then they can go learn it how they need to. And that's kind of the process there.
And that's actually an interesting point in content creation of just the problem of getting started. I think a lot of people, when they think about, I want to start my own YouTube channel, I want to start my own podcast, I want to do whatever, they think they have to have this like perfectly flushed out expert level knowledge of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. When just like your job, like no one gets hired for being a professional right out of the gate. Like that first job's going to be rocky for you because you never worked before. You never really interacted with this world. You don't know the lingo. You don't know how things kind of go. So thinking you have to limit yourself in that way is just going to hurt you more than it helps you. There's nothing wrong with just taking that first step. Exactly like you're saying, like you don't need to wait for someone to come along and say, it's time for you to make a podcast, Elijah, because that person's never going to come along. Just like when you're at work, you have to be clear about the kind of work you want to do and just kind of go for it, because no one's going to come along and ask you. At least if you have a really great manager, they might. But a lot of the times, people just assume that you're happy doing what you're doing, and you need to be. This actually goes back to the conversation we were having before. Clearly communicating what you want up front and how you're going to turn that into something that other people can understand and help you with.
When I was in college, I worked at a IT startup company, where essentially the two founders of the company, they were a married couple, and both were like, hey, you know what? We're not super fond of our day jobs. We're going to go start our own IT company. That's something that we're interested in. As that company was first getting up off the ground, joined in maybe 2 to 3 months into it, they were kind of figuring out, hey, what does this look like running an IT company, essentially from living room in their home. And that first job or two that we did, we were kind of tentative, figuring things out. But as my time there progressed, we got better and better at what we did. Similarly, I have a friend who does consulting in the corporate world. And whenever he takes on a new project, he oftentimes isn't an expert in whatever the specific area is that they're trying to get consulting for. He knows a lot of general principles, is an expert at kind of big organizational how to run a business, but needs to learn the specifics to whatever it is that they're doing. And I asked him one time, like, hey, like, what led you to do this? And he said, I've been an entrepreneur for a couple of years at that point and just figured, hey, I am really good at running a business. I don't know necessarily what everyone else is doing, but um, I can bring the general principles that I have and bring, he's got a very like analytical, data driven approach to running a business. Um, so just take that general approach and figure out the details along the way. It's amazing how much you can do simply with, hey, here's the direction we're going. I'm going to figure it out. I know a lot of computer programmers who would tell you that the key to being a computer programmer is knowing how to use Google.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. That's not even a joke. That's just a fact. That's so, and this actually comes back to another thing I really like about what you're explaining, which is there's it's not just this question of expertise, it's also this question of your niche. Like they're trying to figure out who they are, what they're doing. And right off the bat when you start, you not only do you not always know what you're doing, but you're also don't know what you want to be doing. This is true for making a podcast. This is true for, like, I've been in the software industry for a while, and for the longest time, I thought I might want to do machine learning or be a big app developer or something. And I've decided I want to do none of those things because I've done them and they're kind of not always the super fun. But along the way, you figure out the things you like to do, the things that maybe not necessarily that you're good at, but that excite you so that you can keep pursuing them. And this actually goes back to an episode from last month, finding your niche and knowing how to work it, because that is often what a lot of careers turn into. Like your career is you deciding that you're going to be working on a specific part of your skill set. Like it's not going to be the only thing you work on, but it's the part of your skill set that you like to focus on when you have the opportunity to, so that you can keep building up that talent pool, because no one can be great at everything. You only have so many hours on this earth, unfortunately. But over that time, as you're building that niche, as you're figuring out what works for you, that is when you're really going to figure out what you want to be doing in the first place, which is not always an easy question to answer. Not everyone has the opportunities to figure that out.
Yeah, and sometimes that's something that you figure out along the way. And sometimes it's a total surprise. At my office, I'm known as like the Excel guy because I'm really good at Excel. And I can tell you that I learned that all on the fly. I was given a project, and I had a coworker who was pretty good at Excel, and he's actually gone on and now is a data analyst exclusively. He just deals with numbers because that was what he was good at. But as we were working on this project together, he was just sharing information, knowledge that he had, and combining that with my ability to look things up, figure it out. I took a couple of computer programming classes in college, so I had kind of a framework within which I could fit the specific, formulas and things like that in Excel. But if you had asked me if I could write a formula in Excel when I got hired for that job, I would have said no. I have no idea what I'm doing. Here I am, 2 and change years later, and I'm the Excel expert because it's something that makes sense to me. I stumbled across that a year and a half ago because I was asked to do it, and I said, "Yeah, I'll figure it out."
And that comes from another way to contextualize what we've been talking about is that fear, leaving your comfort zone for a little bit to try something new. And another example, I had just gotten my drone license when I joined the company that I work for right now, and I just kept saying like, I want to fly drones. I want to fly drones. Get a drone, please. Let me fly it. I want to do that really bad. And by pushing that much, because I was like, well, where I am, it would be really interesting if they had a drone and they had a pilot that could do it. Now I've become kind of the head or the lead for the specific type of drones that I fly, but also for a group of people that are also learning how to fly. And just like you've become the Excel guy, I've become the drone guy, because it then it becomes pushing out of your comfort zone. I when it comes to work, you don't want to have that much responsibility. It feels kind of scary, but that's you leaving your comfort zone and trying something new and then gaining, leveling up. And that comes from just working hard at what you want to do and putting yourself out there, like trying the different thing so that you can finally become, a more evolved person, and you now have a different skill because you assign that label to yourself. You're now the Excel guy because when somebody said, "Does anybody know Excel?" you started learning. When you assign that label to yourself and you wear it proudly, then you can then become more useful to the people around you, because now they have a brand for you. They're like, "Oh, that's the Excel guy, that's the drone guy, that's the programming guy." And you can then be able to help more people and work harder because, or work more effectively, because now everybody knows that that skill set is around and you are valuable.
That I totally love that, just because there's also that last part, which was you hinted at that thing, which is like you didn't really have the plan necessarily to be the XL guy, Josh. And maybe Keon, you going in didn't really have the plan to be the drone guy, or well, in a big way you did.
Mhm,
But along the way, there was like you didn't even know that people had this specific need,
mhm,
but you were receptive and you listened to what the actual needs around you were, whether it's in your workplace or in the thing you want to make, and you let that help dictate how you're going to spend your time. Like
mhm,
a lot of the times, a lot of these big ideas, this um cool things that we become fixtures of our lives never started as like a clear idea. It's usually just someone somewhere figured out there was a need, and they just kind of followed that thread until it turned into a technology, a social media platform, a specific role.
After the recap, we're going to have a challenge that we want to give you. So, Kian,
yeah.
do you want to bring us home?
So when you're living your life, you'll find that it's easy to then relate the stuff that you're living to your work and creating content. And the more that you're thinking, creating content, feeling like the most overused word ever and kind of corporate, but when you're making whatever you want to make, your outlet, and that life then imitates it. So the more that you live and the more that you experience things, the more that you can then put that into your art or whatever you want to create. And by working and becoming that person, maybe in a corporate environment or wherever you're working, maybe you have clients, and then you become the Excel guy, you become the drone guy, become the programming guy, because you are then working on that skill. You are putting yourself out there as that person and then growing and rising to the occasion. Fake it till you make it is not the right word, but saying, "Hey, I will dedicate myself to this," and then you slowly become that expert, and it then becomes a skill that you have for the rest of your life, and that really benefits you, because then you can still create and make more art that is based on that, based on these new skills that you're gaining by putting yourself out there and becoming this new person that is taken on that identity of being an expert in a certain thing because you spent the time.
Um, Elijah, before Elijah, before you throw in your challenge, I just want to say one last word of reassurance to all of your listeners, which is just like content creation, it might not be right now, might not be the time to become the super awesome idea creator or whatever. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't think about it.
So, my very simple challenge is think about your job or think about something that you love doing. And I want you to pull out a piece of paper or, pull up, Google Keep or whatever your note taking app is and just write down your why behind what you do, what drives you. Just get back to that like foundational thing that drives you so that you have a clearer picture of where you want to go. Unfortunately, we are all out of time. Thank you so much for listening. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find me at CopycatCaster on Twitter or the show at VODmedia _. You can find us on Reddit at @RVictorYourDeath and on Facebook at victoryordeathmedia. We're also running a giveaway for a free t-shirt. I'm giving away 4, so be sure to fill out the survey and the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one.